Hi, everybody, and welcome back. Just first off, I want to thank you for taking your time, spending your time to listen to me today and hear what I have to say. And I really appreciate the time that you're spending with me. And hopefully, I'm being able to add value to your life. And if I am, um, I'm grateful for that. So that's why I'm doing this. I'm trying to help add value into your life. But today, it's not but, it's an and. And today, got a little bit of a story for you. And I've titled it One of the Days That Changed My Life Forever. And I've been on this personal development, financial education journey for well over a decade now. Well over a decade. And I've been working really hard to get better in both of those areas, which is why I've been promoting and talking about these two concepts the most. But today I want to talk about one of the days that changed my life. Robert Kiyosaki. If you're not familiar with Robert Kiyosaki, he is the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is gone down as the best personal finance book in the history of New York Times bestselling lists. It's just sold millions and millions of copies. He's changed millions and millions of people's lives. He's pretty controversial, but at the same time, if you take the concepts of what he says and take the teachings of what he talks about and begin applying to them, you can start seeing fantastic results in your life. And that's what I did. So this is one of the days that changed my life. This was back September 8th, 2018. I was at a real estate guy's event. It was called The Future of Money and Wealth. We were down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I believe it was at the Hyatt Regency down there in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Fantastic, just beautiful place. As you can imagine, in April, the weather was fantastic. The hotel was right off the ocean, so you'd get the breezes, the noise from the water. It was just a fantastic setting. But on this Sunday, I believe it was Sunday afternoon, I was sitting in the crowd and I looked over to my right and I saw Robert was just finishing up with a book signing. And the line, as you can imagine, was very long while it was quote unquote supposed to be happening. But I looked over and the speaker was just getting ready to take the stage again, and the room was empty. He was sitting in the room with Tom Wheelwright, his CPA at the time, and Tom is actually off to the left side of this picture of Robert and I down here below. But he was sitting next to Tom, and I'm sure they were talking business of some kind. And I looked at my wife and I said, I'm going to go for it. And I got up and I walked into the room, the room he was sitting and signing, and I grabbed a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad, which, if anybody knows me or doesn't know me, I'll tell you now, I have several copies of Rich Dad Poor Dad. Anytime I find a copy for sale, especially if it's used, I will pick one up. So I've got several copies. So I didn't need this copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad, but at the same time, I wanted to have the opportunity to meet Robert. So I grabbed the book, I paid for the book, and I went over right next to him. You can see this picture here. And he took a brief moment and he was fantastic. I mean, obviously he just got done signing, I don't know how many uh, autographs in books for other folks. And here comes this guy running into the room last minute, probably thinking he was going to take a break. And, here I am. So anyways, he took a moment. He signed my book. You can see I've got a picture of what he signed for me that day, which obviously he didn't know me. I tried to convey to him at that point what he had meant to me up till then. But at the same time, it was just, he was very gracious, and I appreciate that at that moment. So at that event, and that signature wasn't what changed my life, but at that event, he spoke. And what he shared on stage that day changed my life in the direction I was heading forever, forever. And so that's what I want to share with you today. So from the stage, as I said, he shared something that instantly changed my life. And here's what it was. He said that he and his wife, Kim, followed what they called the wealth formula. And I had been following Robert for years, and anytime he spoke, I was all ears. I was trying to catch any nugget of wisdom that he was sharing of what to do, how to do. I was still currently at this point in my W-2 job, I was still working for somebody, and I was working desperately to buy assets to be able to generate enough cash flow so that I could leave my W-2 job. And that's all I was focused on. Work on building my asset column. And I talked about that a little bit yesterday, and we will talk about that going on a little bit further. So up until that point, that's all I did. And so when he said he had a wealth formula, as I mentioned, I was all ears. I sat up in my seat. I was ready to take notes. And here's what he shared. He shared the wealth formula that he and Kim, his wife, used was that they built businesses. And from the cash flow of those businesses, they bought assets. And from those assets, they will use the cash flow from the assets to support their lifestyle. And up until that point, I was doing it a little bit different. As I mentioned, I'll go through that again. They built businesses that cash flowed. They used the cash flow from the businesses to buy assets. An asset, as I showed and talked about a little bit yesterday, is something that puts money in your pocket. Okay? So they bought assets with the cash flow. And then they used the cash flow from the assets to support their lifestyle. And that was the formula that he shared that day with the crowd. And as I mentioned a minute ago, up until that point, I was just solely focused on buying rental properties. I had to figure out how I was going to get the next amount of cash flow from a rental property. And that's all I was focused on. I didn't have much money. I was, like I mentioned, I was still working a W-2 job. I didn't have access to a lot of capital. So I was just trying to grind and figure it out and buy one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. And so what happened is when he shared this with me about the businesses first, I pivoted. I pivoted right at that moment. I started to think, okay, I needed to build a business first, then purchase the assets, which then will supply the lifestyle that I desire. So I went home, or actually on that trip, I learned of a way that had been around me all the time. I learned of a way that I was going to then automatically be able to begin exiting my W-2 job by creating a business. And that business turned into a potential for another business that I've been able to cash flow. And then I've also, as I mentioned, I've been able to leave my W-2 job. With that business, I've actually been able to bring my wife on to be a partner in my business. So she doesn't have a W-2 job either, except for what I pay her through my business. And the cash flow from these businesses is going to continue to support and buy the assets moving forward. And because of that progression of business, assets, lifestyle, we are doing better than I could have ever imagined. And so that is one of the days that changed my life. And I know everybody is on a different journey. I know everybody is trying to figure things out for themselves. But what I would encourage you today, and what I'm trying to do with the information and the content that I'm producing, is that there might be one thing, one piece of wisdom, one nugget that totally transforms your life. Just like this day for me with Robert. There's been a few others, and I will share those stories moving forward. I'll share some of those stories coming up in the future, but I wanted to really pinpoint this one today because it goes along with the theme that I've had this entire week of financial education. Had I not worked on my financial education up until that point, like I said, this was 2018. I'd been working on my financial education for years. I would not have heard what Robert had shared up there and how important and how valuable that message was. And I wouldn't have been able to pivot. So you've got to begin to increase the amount of information is in the proper information. You've got to learn terms. You've got to learn the vocabulary. To be successful requires a different vocabulary than what the average individual uses. And you've got to learn what that vocabulary is. And you've got to learn how to use those new terms in your life and apply them. It's not hard. It's just different. It's things that we've never been taught before. Never been taught. And if you're anything like me, when you realize these things, you will get super, super excited because you know that the potential is limitless, because the information is already out there. The people that know how to do what you want to do, they already exist. You just have to find the people and the information, change the vocabulary, think a little differently, and then begin to apply. Go out there and make it happen. And you can do that. Back to this first screen here, because I really enjoy it. That day, I think about that all the time. So find the mentor that's going to help you achieve the success that you're looking for. You can do it. Hopefully some of the wisdom that I'm trying to share with you through personal development and then with my financial education, hopefully that helps. And I'm going to continue. This is what I love to do. I enjoy talking about these things. I enjoy sharing these things. Doesn't matter how old you are. If you're still in school or if you're my parents' age, which my parents aren't around anymore, but that doesn't matter. If you're 60, 70, doesn't matter. You can learn this. I actually taught my dad. That's another story I'll share with you in a future time. So anyways, I will shut it off there. I appreciate your time today. Hopefully this lesson, wisdom, hopefully this story has been valuable. If it is, all I ask is that, if you think that it would be valuable to someone else, share it with them. Let them know that there is a different way of thinking when it comes to finances, education, learning, applying. There's a whole new different world out there. And the world's changing. The world's changing really fast. And if you haven't realized that, then I'm going to assume that you have, because the world is changing very quickly. And if you don't get on top of it, you're going to get swallowed up by it. And that's why I don't want that to happen, because there's no reason for it. There's no reason for it. You can do it. So anyways, I appreciate your time. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little story today. If you found value in it at all, I would ask is that you possibly would share it with somebody else. And hopefully maybe it will help them as well. So I will, as I mentioned, cut it off there. I appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I look forward to being back with you here again real soon. Thank you now. Have a great day now. Bye-bye.